The sun was low behind the jagged mountains, casting long shadows over the dusty battlefield far from Earth. Sergeant Mark Reynolds crouched low behind a broken piece of metal and watched the enemy move ahead in tight formation. His heart beat fast, but his hands were steady. He had trained for moments like this for years, but nothing could prepare him for what was coming. The planet was strange to him. The air was thick and heavy with a sharp smell. The sky was a dull orange color, and the ground was cracked and dry. He looked around carefully. Every sound was loud in his ears: the crunch of gravel beneath boots, the soft hum of alien machines moving through the air. The enemy was close now, but they did not know he was here. Mark had a mission. He had been sent to find out more about the aliens who had attacked human colonies nearby. He was not a killer today. His job was to watch and report, but if they found him, it would be fight or flight. He hoped to stay hidden until he could send a signal back to his team. He raised his eyes slowly and saw a group of alien soldiers moving through the rocks. They were taller than humans, with long limbs and sharp claws. Their skin was dark green and shiny like wet leaves. Their eyes glowed faintly red in the dim light. Mark's breath caught as he realized they were searching the area. He froze still as a statue, hoping they would not see him. The aliens moved closer. Their leader stepped forward. It was a tall figure with strange armor that shimmered like metal made from water. The leader raised a device that sent out a bright light. Mark could see the glow scanning the rocks. He prayed the light would not find him. Suddenly, the light stopped right on his hiding place. Mark's heart jumped. He had been seeing the leader pointed at him and shouted in a harsh alien language. The other aliens turned quickly and surrounded him. Mark dropped his rifle and raised his hands slowly. He did not want to fight. He wanted to live. The leader approached Mark with slow steps, his eyes locked on the soldier. His voice was sharp but curious. He spoke a few words in broken English. "Human alive? Why?" Mark looked at the aliens and took a deep breath. He tried to answer in calm voice. "I'm Scout. No fight, just watch." The leader nodded, but his eyes were hard. Mark could feel the tension in the air. The aliens were not sure what to do with him. They had never taken a human prisoner before. They usually destroyed anyone who came near. Two aliens grabbed Mark's arms and pulled him up. Mark stumbled, but did not resist. He knew fighting now would only make things worse. The aliens marched him toward a large ship waiting on the edge of the battlefield. The ship was dark and silent. It looked like a giant beetle with wings folded tight. Inside the ship, the air was cold and smelled strange. Mark was placed in a small cell with metal walls and no windows. He sat on the floor and tried to stay calm. His mind raced with questions. What would they do to him? Why did they want him alive? Hours passed slowly. The ship moved through the sky like a silent shadow. Mark listened to the sounds outside, the hum of engines, the quiet voices of aliens. He wished he could contact his team, but the cell blocked all signals. Suddenly, the door opened. The leader stepped inside, holding a small device. It looked like a book with glowing pages. The leader looked at Mark and spoke slowly. "You important? Why?" Mark swallowed hard. He remembered his training to stay strong. He said, "I know important, just soldier. Help humans." The leader stared at him for a long moment, then turned away and left. The door closed, and Mark was left alone in the dark. The silence was heavy and cold. He thought about his family back on Earth, his friends, his home. He missed them more than ever. Days passed, but Mark lost track of time. The ship landed on a new planet, and he heard footsteps near his cell. The door opened again. This time, a different alien entered. She was smaller and had softer eyes. Mark noticed she carried a small box with strange tools. She spoke in gentle voice. "I heal you, no hurt." Mark nodded and let her check his arms and legs. She cleaned cuts and bruises with careful hands. Then she gave him water and some strange food. He ate slowly, wondering if he could trust her. The alien smiled softly and said, "You not enemy. We want to learn." Mark looked at her and felt a small hope. He thought maybe there was a chance for peace, but the other aliens were still watching him like he was a prize or a danger. The leader came back and spoke to the smaller alien. They talked in their language Mark could not understand, but the tone was serious. He felt like a chess piece in a game much bigger than himself. One day, the ship stopped moving and the door opened wide. The leader came in and said, "You come with me." Mark stood up and followed the alien leader down a narrow corridor. The walls glowed faint blue light. The air smelled fresh like rain. He wondered where they were taking him. They entered a large room filled with other aliens sitting at tables and talking quietly. The leader pointed at Mark and said, "Human Scout alive." The room grew silent, and many eyes turned toward him. Mark felt like he was being studied like an animal. The leader spoke again. "We decide what to do." Mark swallowed his fear. He thought about running, but there was nowhere to go. He had to wait and see what would happen next. Suddenly, a loud alarm sounded through the ship. The aliens jumped up and rushed to windows and doors. Mark looked outside and saw many ships approaching fast. The humans were coming. The leader turned to Mark and said, "You important now." Mark's heart pounded. He did not understand, but he knew this was only the beginning. The enemy wanted him alive for a reason he did not yet know. He looked out the window and saw the stars shining cold and distant. He knew that soon everything would change. The air inside the alien fortress was cold and quiet. Sergeant Mark Reynolds sat alone in his small metal cell. The walls were smooth and cold. His hands rested on his knees, but his mind raced with questions. He did not know what the aliens wanted from him or what would happen next. Every sound echoed faintly and made the room feel even emptier. Suddenly, the heavy door slid open. A tall alien with glowing red eyes stepped inside. The alien was the same leader who had captured him, but now Mark could see more details. The leader's armor reflected soft blue light, and his face was sharp with strong lines. The alien carried a strange device that hummed quietly in his hand. Mark stood up slowly. The leader spoke in a voice that was low but clear. "You come with me now." Mark did not resist. He followed the leader down a narrow hallway. The walls glowed with soft white light that made the path feel endless. The alien's footsteps were steady and confident. Mark's boots barely made a sound. His heart beat fast, but he stayed silent. They entered a large room filled with strange machines and glowing screens. The room looked like a command center with many aliens working quietly at their stations. Mark's eyes scanned the area. He saw maps of stars and planets floating in the air. The aliens moved with purpose, but none of them looked at him directly. The leader motioned for Mark to sit on a chair in the center of the room. The chair was metal, but comfortable with straps and wires hanging from it. Mark sat down cautiously. The leader connected the wires to the back of Mark's neck and chest. Mark felt a strange warmth spreading through his body like a gentle pulse. The leader spoke again. "We want to learn about your mind, your thoughts, your plans." Mark swallowed hard. He tried to stay calm, but fear mixed with curiosity. He thought about his training, how to keep secrets, even under pressure. The leader activated the device, and bright lights filled the room. Mark closed his eyes as images and words rushed into his head. Memories came alive in his mind, faces of his family, his friends in the army, the battles. He had fought the planets. He had seen. The leader watched carefully as data flowed from Mark's brain into the glowing device. The aliens whispered in their language and nodded often. Time lost meaning. Mark felt like he floated in a sea of images. Some were painful, some were proud moments. He wished he could stop, but the device kept pulling information from him. He fought to hide his deepest secrets, but the leader was skilled at reading his thoughts. After what felt like hours, the device powered down. The leader removed the wires and stood silently. Mark rubbed his neck, feeling tired, but relieved. The leader spoke softly. "You are strong, but we must know more." Mark nodded, though he was not sure what else he could say. The leader gestured for two aliens to bring in another prisoner this time. It was a different species, smaller than Mark, with blue skin and big eyes. The alien prisoner looked scared but hopeful. The leader introduced the new prisoner. "This is Zelak from the planet Voria. We will learn from both of you." Mark and Zelak sat side by side. The leader began asking questions about their worlds and wars. Mark answered carefully, choosing words that told enough, but not too much. Zelak spoke in broken English about her home and people. The aliens listened closely. Days passed in the cold room. Mark and Zelak shared stories quietly about their lives. They found comfort in each other's presence. Even though they came from very different worlds, they understood one thing clearly: they both wanted to survive and find a way home. One night, as the fortress rested, Mark heard strange noises from the hallways. The door opened, and the smaller alien woman who had healed him before entered quietly. She carried a small device that looked like a light box. She smiled softly and handed it to Mark. The device was simple, but it showed images and symbols. Mark studied it carefully. It was a translator that could help him understand the alien language better. The woman whispered, "Use it well, human friend." Mark nodded, silently feeling a spark of hope. He thanked her with his eyes. She disappeared before he could say more. The small gift gave Mark a new tool to fight back the fear and confusion. The leader returned soon after and ordered the room cleared except for Mark and Zelak. The leader looked serious and spoke with urgency. "We received a message from your people. They want your soldier back alive." Mark's heart jumped to the news. He had hoped his team would not abandon him. But hearing it confirmed his importance. The aliens discussed the message in whispers. Mark listened carefully, trying to understand the meaning behind their words. The leader turned to Mark and said, "Your people value you highly. They risk much for your return, but we are not sure why." Mark thought about his mission, the device hidden under his armor, the weapon his commanders had trusted him to protect. He realized the aliens must have learned something important and feared that the balance of power between their species was delicate and dangerous. Suddenly, alarms blared through the fortress. Loud lights flashed red and blue. The aliens moved quickly, but with tension, Mark's mind raced. What was happening? Was the human rescue team arriving? Was this a trap? He tightened his fists, ready for whatever came next. The leader shouted orders in the alien language and pointed to several exit routes. Mark watched as soldiers armed themselves with strange weapons. The fortress doors began to open, and outside, he heard the sound of engines and heavy footsteps approaching. Ships glowed in the distance. Zelak grabbed Mark's arm and whispered, "Your people come, we must be ready." Mark nodded, feeling a mix of hope and fear. The battle was near. But now he was not alone. The strange blue alien beside him was a reminder that even in war there might be friends waiting in the shadows. The leader approached again and spoke directly to Mark. "We will protect you if you help us." Mark looked into the leader's eyes and saw the weight of the choice. He could fight for escape or join in a temporary truce. To survive, the fate of many depended on what he chose next. The fortress shook as explosions rocked the outer walls. The aliens fired back at the incoming forces, but the humans were strong and well prepared. Mark heard shouting and the clash of weapons. The room filled with smoke and dust. The moment was critical. Mark moved to the door, ready to act. He checked the translator device and prepared to speak if needed. Zelak stood beside him, steady and calm. Together, they faced the chaos of war in a place far from home, two prisoners caught in a fight bigger than themselves. The leader's voice cut through the noise. "Hold your ground. We decide soon." Mark's eyes scanned the room, looking for a way out or a sign of help. His mind worked fast, calculating chances and risks. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: he had to survive to tell the story. Outside the fortress, the sounds of battle grew louder. The stars above flickered cold and distant, as if watching silently. Mark took a deep breath and prepared to face what came next. The war was far from over, but he was ready to fight with every breath left in him. The fortress was shaking from the battle outside, but inside, Sergeant Mark Reynolds sat quietly in the cold room. His mind raced with questions and fears. He looked at the small, glowing device in his hand. The translator, the blue-skinned alien Zelak, had given him. It was his only hope to understand the strange language of the aliens who held him captive. The leader of the aliens returned to the room, his face serious and eyes glowing faint red. He carried a small, glowing tablet and spoke slowly in broken English, "Message from your people." Mark's heart beat faster. The message was not just a signal, it was a demand. The humans wanted their soldier back alive. They had sent ships to rescue him, and they were close. The leader looked at Mark and said, "They beg for your return. They risk war to bring you home." Mark looked out the small window and saw dark shapes moving through the sky. The humans were coming fast. The aliens began to prepare for a fight, but there was doubt in their eyes. Some feared the humans would destroy everything if Mark was not handed over. The leader paced back and forth, his voice low. "Why your people want you alive? What makes you so important?" Mark hesitated, but he knew he could not hide the truth forever. The device, hidden under his armor, the secret weapon the humans had given him to protect planet from destruction. He took a deep breath and said, "I carry key power to stop war." The leader stopped pacing and stared at Mark. His eyes narrowed, as if weighing the truth. The room grew quiet, except for the hum of machines. The aliens whispered to each other in their strange language. Mark tried to understand bits and pieces, but the meaning was unclear. Zelak leaned closer and whispered, "They afraid of what you hold." Mark nodded. He knew the weapon he carried could change the balance of power. It was a secret humans had kept safe until now, but the aliens had discovered it and feared what it could do in their hands or against them. Suddenly, the fortress shook violently. A loud explosion rocked the walls. The battle outside had reached the gates. The aliens scrambled to defend their home, but fear was spreading among them. The leader shouted orders and called soldiers to arms. Mark stood and looked at Zelak. "We must be ready. The humans come soon." Zelak nodded, her eyes fierce. "Together we fight or we fall." The leader turned to Mark again. "If your people win, you go with them, but if we win, you stay and help us." Mark felt the weight of the choice. The aliens wanted to use him as a key to their power. He did not trust them, but he also feared what would happen if the war continued. His mind raced, trying to find a way to survive and protect what mattered most. The door to the room opened suddenly, and a group of aliens rushed in, carrying weapons. The air was thick with tension and fear. Mark felt the pulse of the fortress as it prepared for battle. Zelak stood close, ready to fight by his side. Outside the walls, the sounds of heavy weapons and explosions grew louder. The humans pushed forward with strength and determination. The sky was filled with streaks of light from laser blasts and flying ships. Mark felt hope rise in his chest, but he knew the fight would be hard. The leader moved to a large console and began typing rapidly. He spoke to his commanders in the alien language. Mark watched the screens as images of the battlefield appeared. The humans were breaking through the outer defenses faster than expected. Mark's mind worked fast. He needed to find a way to use this chaos to escape or turn the fight in his favor. He studied the layout of the fortress on the screen and noticed a weak point near the lower level, a narrow corridor that led to the docking bay where ships were kept. He turned to Zelak. "We can get out through there if we can fight our way." Zelak smiled grimly. "I trust you, human." The leader overheard the plan and shouted, "No escape, we hold you here." Mark stepped forward and raised his hands. "Listen, I want peace, not war." The leader's eyes burned with suspicion, but the fighting noise grew louder outside. His commanders urged him to act quickly. The fortress shook again as explosions rocked the walls. Suddenly, the door burst open and a group of human soldiers stormed in, led by Captain Mira Collins. They moved with speed and precision, clearing aliens. As they went, Mark recognized the voice of his commander shouting orders. Mark felt relief flood through him, but danger was still close. The aliens fought fiercely to protect their leader, and the fortress, the room, became a battlefield with flashes of light and sounds of gunfire. Mark and Zelak took cover behind consoles, ready to fight. Captain Collins spotted Mark and shouted, "Hold on, Reynolds, we are here." Mark moved toward her, but a blast hit the wall nearby, throwing dust and debris in the air. The leader grabbed a weapon and fired at the humans. The battle was fierce and desperate. Both sides fought for control of the fortress and the soldier who held the key. Mark knew this was his chance. He grabbed Zelak's hand and shouted, "Now we move." Together they ran through the corridors, using the translator device to avoid traps and ambushes. The sounds of fighting faded behind them as they moved toward the docking bay. The ship waiting there was the same dark beetle-like craft that had brought Mark to the fortress. As they reached the bay, the humans followed close behind. They worked quickly to open the airlock. The leader and his soldiers were not far behind, and the tension grew thick. Mark climbed into the ship and helped Zelak aboard. The engines hummed to life. Captain Collins joined them and shouted, "Hold tight, we are leaving." The ship lifted off just as the aliens reached the bay. The humans fired at the pursuing forces as the craft sped away through the dark sky. Mark looked back at the fortress disappearing behind the clouds. The war was not over, but he was safe for now. Inside the ship, Mark felt the weight of what had happened. His mind was full of questions about what would come next. The humans had risked everything to save him, but the aliens still wanted his power. The future was uncertain, but he knew he had a mission to protect his people and maybe find peace. Zelak looked at Mark and said, "You are not alone now, human. We fight together." Mark smiled tiredly. Yes, together. The stars outside shone cold and distant, but inside the ship a new hope was born. The fight for survival and understanding had only just begun. The ship flew silently through the dark space away from the burning fortress. Sergeant Mark Reynolds sat beside Zelak, the blue-skinned alien who had become his unexpected ally. The stars outside flickered cold and distant, but inside the cabin the air felt tense with the weight of what had just happened. Mark held the small, glowing translator device tightly in his hand. His mind was full of questions about what was next and how he could protect the secret power he carried. Captain Mira Collins stood at the controls, her face calm but determined. She glanced back at Mark and Zelak and said, "We made it out, but the fight is far from over. The enemy will not give up easily. They will come after us to take you back." Mark nodded. He knew the captain was right. The aliens feared the weapon. He held the power to stop wars. But in the wrong hands, it could bring destruction. The fate of many worlds rested on his shoulders, and he felt the heavy burden of responsibility. Zelak looked at Mark and spoke softly. "Your people trust you with something great. You must keep it safe, but you are not alone now. We fight together." Mark smiled faintly and said, "I never thought I would find a friend like you in the middle of a war." The ship's engines hummed steadily as they traveled toward the human fleet, waiting near a distant planet. The journey was long and silent, except for the occasional reports from Captain Collins about the enemy ships searching for them. The tension grew heavier with each passing moment. Mark spent his time studying the translator device, trying to learn more about the alien language. He wanted to understand everything the enemy might say if they caught him again. The device helped him piece together words and meanings, but the language was complex and filled with strange sounds. One night, as the ship glided through the void, a sudden alarm blared through the cabin. Red lights flashed, signaling danger. Captain Collins shouted, "Enemy ships detected. We must prepare for battle." The ship rocked violently as blasts hit the shields. The enemy had found the mark, and Zelak grabbed weapons and took their positions. The cabin filled with the sounds of laser fire and alarms. The humans fought fiercely to protect their prize. Mark's heart pounded as he fired at approaching fighters. The enemy ships moved fast and were well armed, but the humans had better technology and training. The battle raged for what felt like hours. The ship dodged and weaved through the enemy attack. Suddenly, the captain ordered, "All hands brace for impact." A massive blast hit the ship, throwing everyone to the floor. Mark struggled to stay conscious. The lights flickered, and the ship groaned from the damage. The enemy was close to breaking through the defenses. Zelak crawled to Mark's side and said, "Hold on, human, we can make it." Mark gritted his teeth and forced himself up. The ship shuddered, but Captain Collins regained control. She shouted, "Divert all power to shields. We have one chance to escape." The ship surged forward, jumping through a warp gate, leaving the enemy behind. The stars stretched into lines as they traveled faster than light. The cabin slowly quieted as the danger passed. The humans breathed sighs of relief, but Mark knew this was only one battle in a longer war. Days later, the ship docked at the human command station. Mark was greeted by officers and scientists eager to learn about his experience and the secret device. He carried the pressure to protect. The weapon grew heavier, but Mark stayed focused on his mission. Scientists worked around the clock to study the device. The leaders debated how to use its power wisely. The humans knew that if the aliens got hold of it, the war would escalate into something terrible. Mark felt the weight of being the key to peace and destruction. During this time, Mark and Zelak shared stories about their worlds and cultures. The friendship between the human soldier and the alien prisoner grew stronger. They learned that even in war there could be understanding and respect. The hope for peace shone brighter between them. One evening, Mark sat alone, looking out at the stars. He thought about the fortress, the battle, and the price of survival. He wondered if the war would ever end, or if his mission would lead to more fighting. The future was unclear, but he knew he had to keep fighting for what was right. Suddenly, the station's alarms blared again. The communications officer shouted, "Incoming message from unknown source." The screen lit up with a holographic figure. It was the alien leader who had captured Mark. His eyes were hard, but there was a new seriousness in his voice. He spoke slowly. "We offer peace. We do not want endless war. We ask to talk." Mark and the human commanders exchanged surprised looks. The offer was unexpected. The war had been brutal and bitter, but maybe this was a chance to change things. The alien leader continued, "The power your soldier carries can save many lives or destroy worlds. We seek an agreement to protect it and end the fighting." The humans debated fiercely, but Mark felt a strange hope grow inside him. Maybe the war could end through talk, not blood. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, there was a chance. Mark looked at Zelak and said, "We must try to find peace for all our sakes." Zelak nodded. "Together we will face whatever comes next." As the stars twinkled cold and distant outside the station, the two soldiers from different worlds prepared to change the future. They knew the road would be hard, but hope burned bright in their hearts. The space station was alive with activity as Sergeant Mark Reynolds and Zelak prepared for what might be the most important mission of their lives. The offer of peace from the alien leader had sparked cautious hope, but both knew the road ahead would be difficult. The secret weapon Mark carried was powerful enough to end wars or start them anew. Every step had to be careful, and every choice weighed with care. Captain Mira Collins gathered the team in the briefing room. The room was filled with humans and aliens working side by side. The tension was high, but so was the determination. The mission was clear: find a way to meet with the alien leaders and negotiate peace before more lives were lost. Mark listened closely as the captain spoke. We have limited time. The enemy is divided. Some want to continue fighting, others are open to talks. We must reach out to the peace faction before the war destroys us all. Zelak stood beside Mark and said softly, "This mission is not just about weapons or battles. It is about trust and understanding. We carry the hopes of many." The team prepared their ships and supplies. Mark checked his gear one last time. His thoughts went to the fortress where he had been captured, to the battles fought and the friends made. He felt ready, but knew the journey would test him in ways he never imagined. As they launched into the vast emptiness of space, the silence was filled with anticipation. The stars glowed like distant fires guiding their path. The ships moved quickly, weaving through asteroid fields and abandoned debris from past conflicts. The crew stayed alert, knowing that danger could strike at any moment. During the trip, Mark used the translator device to practice the alien language. He wanted to be ready to speak directly with the leaders and show respect through understanding. Zelak helped him with pronunciation and meanings. Their friendship deepened as they prepared for the talks ahead. Suddenly, the ships came to a stop near a massive structure floating in space. It was the Peace Faction's stronghold, a beautiful but imposing station made of sleek metal and shimmering energy fields. The crew felt a mix of awe and nervousness as they approached. Mark looked at Zelak and said, "This is at the moment to show we want peace." Zelak nodded. "May this meeting bring a new beginning." They docked carefully and entered the station, greeted by representatives from both sides. The atmosphere was tense, but polite. The alien leader who had captured Mark was there along with other commanders who had fought in the war. Their faces showed weariness, but also a glimmer of hope. The meeting began slowly with formal greetings and cautious words. Mark took a deep breath and stepped forward using the translator device. He spoke clearly. "I am Sergeant Mark Reynolds. I come in peace, representing humanity. We want to end this war before more lives are lost." The alien leader responded, "We are tired of fighting too. We want safety for our people and yours. The power you carry is dangerous, but can also protect. We must find a way to use it wisely." The talks continued for hours with difficult questions and honest answers. Both sides shared fears and hopes. Mark listened carefully and spoke with respect, reminding everyone that peace required sacrifice and trust. Zelak stood by him, offering support and insights into the alien culture. At one point, a sudden alarm sounded. The station shook violently, and warning lights flashed. Red fighters appeared on the screens, moving rapidly toward the stronghold. The war faction was launching an attack, trying to sabotage the peace talks. Chaos erupted as the crew rushed to defend the station. Mark and Zelak moved quickly to help. The battle was fierce, with blasts of energy and flashes of light. Mark felt the weight of the weapon he carried, knowing it could turn the tide if used wisely. Captain Collins shouted orders, coordinating defense teams. The humans and aliens fought side by side, showing strength and unity. Their courage and skill surprised the attackers, who began to retreat. The peace stronghold remained intact, but the danger was clear. After the battle, the leaders returned to the talks more determined than ever. Mark spoke passionately. "This fight shows why peace is needed. Now more than ever, we must end the war before it destroys everything." The alien leader nodded slowly. "Agreed, we will work together to find a new path." The meeting ended with a tentative agreement to cease hostilities and form a council to oversee peace efforts. The weapon Mark carried would be controlled by representatives from both sides, ensuring it would only be used to protect and never to destroy. Mark and Zelak felt relief and hope as they prepared to return to their people. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, there was a chance to build a future without war. As the ships left the stronghold, the stars shone brightly, welcoming the new beginning. Mark looked at Zelak and said, We did something important today, something that might change everything. Zelak smiled. Together we are stronger than enemies, we are friends. The journey home was filled with quiet determination and the promise of peace. The two soldiers from different worlds knew that their bond and the choices they made would echo across the stars for generations to come. The space between stars stretched vast and quiet as Sergeant Mark Reynolds and Zelak returned to their homes aboard the sleek human vessel. The mission to forge peace had brought hope, but also new challenges. The galaxy was fragile, and the future uncertain. Mark held the glowing translator device tightly in his hands. It was more than just a tool, it was a symbol of their fragile alliance. Captain Mira Collins stood near the controls, her face calm, but alert. She spoke softly. The peace agreement is a start, but many do not trust each other. Yet this mission showed we can work together to protect what matters. Mark nodded. He looked out at the endless darkness, dotted with distant stars. Each light was a world with its own story. Many had suffered in the long war. The power he carried was a promise of safety, but also a warning of destruction if used carelessly. Zelak sat beside him, her blue skin faintly glowing in the cabin light. She smiled. We fought side by side and found hope where once was fear. Now grows trust. This is just the beginning. The ship's systems beeped softly as it approached the human command center. The crew prepared for arrival, knowing that leaders and citizens alike would watch closely. The success of the peace talks was crucial to lasting harmony. Mark spent hours in meetings explaining the weapon and the importance of joint control. Scientists and commanders listened with intense interest. Some asked hard questions about risks and safeguards. Others spoke of dreams for a peaceful future. The weight of responsibility pressed on Mark, but he felt ready to face it. Zelak joined in the talks, sharing insights about her people and the alien culture. Her words bridged gaps and built understanding. Her presence was a living proof that cooperation was possible even in the darkest times. Despite progress, tensions remained. Some factions on both sides doubted the sincerity of peace. Some wanted to continue fighting, believing strength was the only path. Others feared betrayal and war returning like a shadow. Mark and Zelak worked tirelessly to calm fears and build trust. One day a message arrived from deep space, an unknown signal carrying a warning. The source was unclear, but the message was urgent. It spoke of a hidden threat waiting beyond the known galaxy, something powerful and dangerous that could destroy all worlds if left unchecked. The leaders gathered quickly to discuss the threat. Mark felt a chill as he listened. They realized the war they had fought might be only a part of a larger danger, something beyond their understanding and control. Captain Collins said firmly, "We must unite, not only for peace, but for survival. The weapon we have can protect, but only if we work together as one." Mark looked at Zelak and said, "This new threat is a test for everything we built. If we fail, the cost will be unimaginable." Zelak nodded. "We must prepare and stand together stronger than ever." The humans and aliens began joint training exercises, sharing tactics and knowledge. The crews learned to operate each other's ships and weapons, building trust and friendship. The bonds formed in battle became bonds of unity. Mark led small teams on missions to explore the edges of their space, searching for signs of the threat. The journey was dangerous and full of unknowns, but each discovery brought them closer together and gave hope for the future. During these missions, Mark and Zelak found moments of peace. They shared stories of home and dreams for their people. Their friendship deepened into something rare and powerful, a symbol of what could be achieved when enemies chose to be allies. Back on the command center, new councils were formed with equal leaders from humans and aliens. The weapons control was handed over to this group, ensuring no one could misuse its power. The peace treaty became a living document adapted to meet challenges and changes. As the threat loomed closer, the galaxy held its breath. The new alliance faced its greatest challenge. But Mark and Zelak believed in the strength they had found in each other and in their people. They knew that only together could they survive and protect the future. One evening, as the stars shone cold and bright, Mark looked at Zelak and said, "No matter what comes, we face it as one." Zelak smiled warmly. "Together we are unstoppable." The vastness of space stretched before them, full of dangers and hope. The story of two soldiers from different worlds was far from over. It was the beginning of a new chapter, where unity and courage would shape the fate of many worlds. The stars shone cold and distant as Sergeant Mark Reynolds and Zelak prepared for what might be the final battle. The galaxy was tense with fear and hope. The new alliance between humans and aliens had grown strong, but a hidden threat from the dark edges of space loomed closer. Every world held its breath, waiting for what was to come. Mark stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking out at the swirling clouds of a massive storm. In space, the enemy fleet gathered beyond the storm, ready to strike. Their ships were dark and silent, like shadows waiting to pounce. The weapon Mark carried was secured nearby, a symbol of power and peace, but also a target. Captain Mira Collins moved beside him, her face calm, but filled with resolve. She said, "This is what we train for. The fate of many worlds rests on this battle. We fight not just for survival, but for a future where peace can grow." Mark nodded. He felt the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders, but also a fierce determination. The years of fighting and negotiating had led to this moment, the chance to end the threat forever and protect the fragile peace. Zelak joined them, her blue skin glowing softly in the dim light. She said, "We stand united, no longer enemies, but brothers and sisters in arms. This is our strength." The fleet moved forward slowly into the storm. The ships shuddered as lightning and energy waves cracked through the clouds. The enemy fleet appeared suddenly like dark specters, rising from the shadows. The battle began with a roar of weapons and explosions. Mark led his team in fierce fighting. The space around them was filled with flashes of light and the sounds of laser fire. The enemy was strong, but the alliance was stronger. The humans and aliens fought side by side, covering each other and pushing forward. Zelak piloted her ship with skill and courage. She guided smaller fighters into the heart of the enemy fleet, disrupting their formation. The teamwork between species amazed many and showed how far they had come from enemies to allies. The flagship took heavy damage, but the crews never faltered. Captain Collins coordinated repairs and defenses with calm authority. The weapon Mark carried was ready to be used if the battle turned against them, but everyone hoped it would not come to that. During the fighting, Mark saw moments of bravery and sacrifice, soldiers risking everything to protect their friends and homes. The battle was brutal and long, but the Alliance's spirit never broke. They fought with hope burning bright in their hearts. Suddenly, a massive enemy ship broke through the lines, heading straight for the flagship. Mark's heart pounded as alarms blared. The captain shouted orders to prepare defenses. Zelak maneuvered her fighter to intercept the attacker. The smaller ships engaged the enemy, forcing it to slow down. The flagship fired its weapons, but the enemy was strong and pushed forward. Mark realized it was a desperate move to capture or destroy the weapon. In that moment, Mark made a decision. He activated the weapon, carefully releasing a controlled burst of energy. The blast was powerful, but precise. It disabled the enemy ship without destroying it. The attackers were stunned, and the tide of battle shifted. The enemy fleet began to retreat. Some ships fled into the storm, while others surrendered. The Alliance ships pursued cautiously, but the threat was weakening. The battle was turning toward victory. After the fight, the fleet gathered to assess damage and mourn lost friends. Mark stood with Zelak and Captain Collins, feeling exhausted, but proud. The cost had been high, but the future was now possible. The weapon had been used as a tool for peace, not destruction. Leaders from both species came together to sign a new treaty, a promise to work together to prevent future wars and to protect the fragile peace. The councils formed earlier were strengthened and given new powers to ensure cooperation. Mark looked at Zelak and said, "We did it together. We changed the course of history." Zelak smiled. "Yes, and this is only the beginning." The stars outside twinkled cold and bright as the flagship sailed toward home. The story of two soldiers from different worlds was now a legend, a tale of courage, friendship, and hope that would inspire generations to come. Mark knew challenges would still come, but with allies by his side, he was ready to protect peace and fight for a future where no soldier would be captured again, only welcomed as a friend. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, but now it was also a place where unity could shine brighter than war. The journey had been long and hard, but the promise of peace was worth every step. As the ship sailed through the endless dark, Mark looked ahead with hope and determination. The story was far from over, but the path was clear. Together, they would face whatever came next, united as one.